Well, government sources have told NDTV that the momentum in the disengagement process in Ladakh appears to have lost steam, with a stalemate emerging in the Depsang Plains region, in Gogra, and in a part of the Fingers region along the Pangong Lake, where India and China had started a mutual disengagement by creating a buffer zone between both sides. But this now appears to be a betrayal of faith, because despite agreeing to withdraw and disengage further, the Chinese haven't done it. So what exactly are we talking about? Well, this is the broad area. On your right, the red line is the line of actual control between India and China in Ladakh. These are the areas where the Chinese have actually intruded. Depsang up north in a place called Subsector North, Galwan, where there has been a disengagement, the Hot Springs region, the Gogra region, and further south in the Pangong Lake region in the Fingers area. Over there is where the Chinese have come in. Where have they withdrawn? Well, there's been disengagement in Galwan that has certainly taken place. There's been some disengagement in the Hot Springs area. However, Pangong somewhat, but not entirely, nowhere close to what India wants. And there's been no disengagement either in Gogra or in the Depsang region. And without this taking place, it becomes a real problem. Joining us now, Lieutenant General DS Hooda, the former Northern Army commander. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us. There's been a disengagement in Galwan, very little in the Pangong Lake region. Depsang is the big worry. We aren't even talking about that enough. What does this mean for India? What options do we have? General.
So thank you, Vishnu, for inviting me on your show. I think the ball is clearly in India's court. I mean, the Chinese would be happy with where they are. As you said, they're certainly, fairly deep in Depsang Plains, similarly in the Pangong area. And now we are hearing that disengagement has not also taken place in some areas around the hot spring. So I think the ball is clearly in India's court, because the Chinese would be happy sitting where they are sitting. And I think it's for us to sort of trigger, some kind of further negotiations, whether it's, I leave it to the government. I don't want to sit there and prejudge whether it's economic action, political action, diplomatic action, even I would say some military action. But I think, just letting this drift on is not in our interest at all.
All right. General, hold your thoughts. I want to talk a little bit about the Pangong Lake area. Let's bring up that next set of images on the Pangong Lake. Well, the Pangong Lake area is located southeast. Let's have that up full screen. It's located southeast of Leh, that's the capital of Ladakh. Let's have that graphic up, that series of graphics, so that I can explain the context over here. So that's the Pangong Lake over there. Now, what exactly is the concern over here? Let's go to the next point. Well, the Chinese, as you can see over there, they've inscribed their maps into parts of the Pangong Lake area in the Fingers region to state their claim over there. They've moved back, but only very, very slightly. Now, let's give you an idea of what we are talking about here. What you see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are spurs from the Changchengmo range, which lead on to the Pangong Lake. Each spur is referred to as a finger because, in a sense, it looks like the fingers of somebody's hand. Now, what exactly is India's claim? India claims that we can patrol all the way up to finger 8. China claims that they can go all the way up to finger 4 in terms of their claim area, and therefore the area in between is the disputed area. In this disputed area, what exactly has China been doing? As you can see over here, they've been constructing heavily. These are from the finger 5 area, from where they've not really gone back, and a little distance away, they've even constructed piers where they've got their boats. And so all of this is no good for us. It's nowhere close to where India would like to be at this stage. General, I'd like to ask you about the military options at this stage. Normally, when people talk about military actions or when militaries act, they act and then talk later. But we find ourselves in this country in this peculiar position where the Chinese have imposed their will, and now we are talking about what we can do when the Chinese would be ready and awaiting a potential military move. Doesn't that make it doubly difficult for us to act militarily?
It does, Vishnu. Frankly, as I said now, the initiative is with India to see what they can do. So the Chinese have come in, they've exercised the military option. They've occupied these areas, upping the ante, going up the escalation ladder is now for India to do. And obviously, the Chinese are banking on the fact that India may not be willing to or wanting to, go up and risk further escalation. My sense always has been, Vishnu, that yes, while we need to rely on diplomacy and economic pressures, etc., we cannot completely, rule out the military option. That so much narrows, the bouquet of responses that we have. Whether, we are looking at risks of conflict enhancing. Yes, we are looking at risks of conflict enhancing. But the fact is the current situation completely acceptable to us? Vishnu, it's not a matter of only a little bit of territory here and there, which obviously is important to us. I think it's also a fact that India's image, is at stake here within the region and even internationally. So I think there are many things that we need to think about, and just drifting along, I think, should not be an option for us.
General, let's just talk briefly about the Depsang area. We've not spoken about it enough. Let's bring up that image of the Depsang area. These are the Depsang Plains. Let's have that up if we can, the image of Depsang over there, so that I can just explain what we are talking about. Let's have that up full screen as well. These are plains over here. This is one of the few areas where there can actually be tank battles. The Chinese have apparently come in 15 to 18 kilometers in this area. There's a strategic high-altitude airbase, Daulat Beg Oldie, the existence of which irritates the Chinese no end. But the strategic importance of this is it's something which people don't perhaps know, General. If the Chinese were to make an incursion, a military incursion more than what they've done, and try and get up to that Karakoram area, Karakoram Pass area, and then eventually on to Siachen from the other side, then the possibility of our worst nightmare, a strategic link-up between China on the east and Pakistan on the west, can actually take place. Is that out of the realm of possibility at this present juncture?
No, Vishnu, it's not out of the realm of possibility, although it's not going to be, a completely sort of easy task, because between the Depsang Plains, as we see it, and the Nubra Valley, where Siachen Glacier lies the Karakoram Mountains. And so crossing over these mountains is going to be extremely, extremely challenging. But having said that, this is possibly the only area, the subsector north, where you could look at some linkages, of our western borders and our eastern borders. So Depsang is strategically, fairly important to us. Vishnu, I just want to make also one point. The thing about our perception and the Chinese perception is fine, but there was a clear understanding on both sides that nobody would have any permanent infrastructure, nobody would have any permanent installations in that area. And that's where I think the Chinese, having come in, at Finger 5, built permanent infrastructure, similarly camping in the Depsang area, is a complete change from protocols and agreements that have existed. And that's why I think our insistence on the Indian side that we must restore status quo ante.
All right, General Hooda, thank you very much, sir, for joining us and sharing your views over there. We're also joined by Sudhindra Kulkarni, who's been looking at this very, very closely, and Brigadier Anil Gupta, an army veteran who's also spokesperson of the BJP. Thank you both very much for being with us. Mr. Kulkarni, we in our country have never really faced a scenario like this in a very long time since Kargil took place. Do you believe at some level the Chinese has taken our decision-making structure by complete surprise, that they have essentially come into our territory and we simply don't know how to react?
Vishnu, thanks a lot for calling me for this discussion. We should not jump to any hasty conclusion that we have reached a point of no return and only going up the escalation ladder is the option. On 7th of July, our National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Foreign Minister, China Wang Yi, had a very productive conversation and reached a consensus. And an important point of that consensus is that the troops of both countries would disengage along the LAC ASAP. It is a complicated matter. It's going to take time. And maybe one more round of conversation between the two special representatives of India and China would be required. But a strategic decision has been taken on both sides that the situation must not be allowed to worsen into a crisis that cannot be controlled later on.
Okay.
But I would like to make one very important point. All the discussion on your channel, on many other channels that's taking place is on the manifestation of the problem and not the root of the problem.
Yes, true, I agree.
The root of the problem is that our two countries have allowed the boundary dispute to remain unresolved for 72 years. And unless the boundary dispute is resolved, just concentrating on the repeated recurrent problems that occur on LAC is not going to lead us anywhere. If we want permanent peace and tranquility between India and China, we have to resolve the boundary dispute and convert the line of control into what I've been saying, boundary of assured control. And that's only possible if the Indian establishment, the ruling party as well as the opposition, especially the BJP and the Congress, come to a national consensus on how to resolve the boundary dispute on a permanent basis.
Okay.
Which will of course require mutual compromises by
Just one moment, Mr. Kulkarni. I just want to go across to Brigadier Gupta as well. Brigadier, you wear many hats. You're a BJP spokesperson, but you're also a soldier. You spent decades in uniform, decades preparing for just the situation that we are in. In the situation that we are in, do you believe that it is wise to not consider a military move despite this extent of provocation? I'm saying this responsibly. We aren't a network that says, go, let's have a war and let's finish them. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this with, in a thought out manner. That, is it not time to up the escalation matrix to start thinking about that?
Vishnu, as a seasoned veteran and having seen the ill effects of war, I can tell you that escalation is not the answer. The need of the hour is seeing the economy of the both nations and the way pandemic has hit the economy. The need of the hour is to diffuse the situation. We have to diffuse the situation, but we cannot let our guard down. While keeping our guard up and preparing for the worst, we should not go for the escalation. That's my committed view. I also feel that there's enough opportunity for negotiations. China wants long negotiation. It's Chinese tactics of wearing down the opponents through lengthy and tiresome discussions and negotiations, which is not likely to happen in the case of India because India has understood that game. So therefore, this system of negotiations, talks after talks at different levels, at different, I would say, diplomatic or military or even political levels will carry on. And I think the winters will decide ultimately what the Chinese Communist Party wants.
Yeah.
Because in winters, to maintain such force levels in the Tibetan Plateau is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
For us, it may be difficult, but it's simpler than the Chinese army because our troops are accustomed to. We have acclimatized troops. Our troops are used to staying in such heights. Only thing is we need to spend extra on the infrastructure and for the power and the fuel which is required urgently in these areas during those peak winter months.
Well, I think absolutely.
But for the Chinese soldiers,
yeah, they perhaps
I think
have
they're not
done
used
that.
to such.
But, this is also changing in the Doklam area, for example, they now do have an all-winter presence as well. They built up structures, evidently heated structures as well. So that resolve is there. Let's just hope that things do ease up. I'd like to thank both of you very much for joining us today. All sorts of options available to India right now. What really is the wisest one in the situation like this?